Now, 6 years ago, an English teacher left her home in Zurich and came to Scotland to live with her husband. Last year, her first book of short stories was published, and she's now working on her second novel, both of which are written in English. In her final report on Scottish female authors, Karen Greenshields meets Regi Claire.
An author of contemporary Scottish fiction, Ron Butlin writes mornings in longhand in the bathroom. His Swiss-born wife, Regi Claire, a short story writer of one book and another pending, writes evenings in her cubbyhole upstairs. In the afternoons, the couple meet, talk and discuss each other's work.
He's sort of more natural about it. You know, he just reads to me whatever he's just written, and then we would discuss things, and sometimes I would be critical with his work, and he would be critical with mine, you know, maybe pointing out mistakes or whatever. You know, things that aren't right. Obviously, I'm not an experienced writer, and I need all the help I can get, and he's very good about that.
6 years ago, marriage to Ron brought Regi and her dog Anya from their native home in Switzerland to Scotland. A former English teacher, Regi decided to try her hand at writing, but first she had to choose which language she should write in.
Quite frankly, I did write the first story I ever wrote when I was in Scotland, was in German, and then Ron couldn't read it. And I tried to translate it, and obviously he was very critical, you know, and after one paragraph I gave up and said, well, blow it, I'll just write in English, it's simpler. Aunt Rachel's restaurant was open air, with a terrace overlooking the river. The menus would flap in a wind that came gusting down the gorge a mile upstream, swishing about in the fir trees and making hot meals and drinks go cold within minutes. On rainy days, mist curled and settled under the tables, like a litter of wet, grey dogs. All this was to become familiar to me in time.
She actually seems to have a much better grasp of English in many ways than I do. Regi studied English, and so her grasp of the grammar is an immediate learned one, whereas mine is a more colloquial one. And in fact it does, and I'm really being serious, sometimes I actually have to ask Regi, and she tends to keep me right occasionally.
And she must be keeping herself right too, because she won the Edinburgh Review short story competition in 1995, and 2 years ago the Scottish Arts Council awarded her a writer's bursary. So, does she consider herself a Scots or a Swiss writer?
Well, I try to probably fuse both, but especially in terms of settings. I would sometimes use Scotland, sometimes Switzerland, and obviously writing in English would make me a Scottish writer in that sense, although I feel a bit of a fraud, you know, having come here 5.5 years ago and having lived in Switzerland before and now calling myself a Scottish writer. I'm not sure. I think I'm an in-between, a kind of amphibious creature.
And although Regi's four-legged creature Anya loves her new life in Scotland, she hasn't quite mastered the language as well as her mistress. She only responds to instructions in the Swiss dialect.
Karen Greenshields there.